Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched his crew work in the dark tunnels of Kepler 7. The asteroid mining station was hot, dangerous, and filled with the constant sound of drilling machines. Every breath burned his lungs with dust and chemical fumes. The shock collar around his neck beeped softly, reminding him that the Zephyrians were always watching. "Move faster, humans," shouted Guard Captain Kreldos, his blue scales gleaming under the harsh work lights. The alien stood 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and cold yellow eyes that looked at humans like they were broken tools. "The ore quota must be met or there will be no food tonight." Jake bit back his anger and kept working. He had learned long ago that fighting back only meant pain or death. The Zephyrians had ruled over humans for over 200 years now. They called humans the slave species and treated them worse than animals. Most humans had forgotten what freedom even meant. Lisa Carter crawled out from under a broken drilling machine, her hands covered in grease and cuts. She had been an engineer before the conquest, back when humans still had jobs and dreams. Now she spent her days fixing old equipment that should have been replaced years ago. "The main drive is dying," she whispered to Jake. "Without new parts, it will break down completely in a few days. Then we fix it with what we have," Jake replied quietly. "We always do." Pete Rodriguez looked up from where he was setting explosive charges to break apart rock. He was good with bombs and demolition, but the Zephyrians only let him use his skills to dig holes in asteroids. Sometimes Pete dreamed about using his explosives for something more important, but such thoughts were dangerous. The 3 humans had worked together for 5 years now. They trusted each other, which was rare in the slave camps. Most humans were too broken or scared to form real friendships. The Zephyrians liked it that way. Alone, humans were weak. Together, they might remember what they used to be. Jake remembered stories his grandfather told him about Earth before the conquest. Cities full of free humans, schools where children learned about science and art, and governments chosen by the people. It seemed like fairy tales now. Earth was just another slave world. Its cities turned into work camps and factories. The Zephyrian Empire controlled hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. They were not just one species, but 4 different alien races working together. They had advanced technology, powerful weapons, and a military that had never lost a war. When they found Earth in 2156, humanity's armies lasted only 6 months. "Break time is over," Kreldos shouted. "Back to work, slaves." Jake picked up his tool and started drilling again. The vibration traveled up his arms and made his bones ache. He was only 35 years old, but the hard work and poor food made him feel much older. Most humans died before they reached 50 in the mines. As he worked, Jake's drill hit something unusual. Instead of rock, there was a hollow sound. He looked around to make sure no guards were watching, then carefully made the hole bigger. Behind the rock was a small metal box, hidden away and forgotten. Jake's heart began to beat faster. He quickly covered the hole with loose rocks and dirt. Whatever was in that box, it was not supposed to be there. The Zephyrians had searched every inch of their territory after the conquest, looking for human weapons and technology to destroy. That night, in the cramped sleeping quarters, Jake waited until the other workers were asleep. The guards did their rounds every 2 hours, checking that all the slaves were in their beds. Between rounds, Jake had maybe 15 minutes of darkness and quiet. He carefully opened the metal box under his thin blanket. Inside was a small computer device, the kind humans used before the conquest. Jake's hands shook as he turned it on, keeping the screen dim so no one would see the light. The device came to life, showing words that made Jake's eyes fill with tears. "Human resistance data, Cache 7 Alpha. If you are reading this, then humanity still survives. Do not give up hope." Jake scrolled through the files, his excitement growing with each page. There were detailed maps of Zephyrian military bases, lists of human slave colonies across the galaxy, and most importantly, contact information for other resistance cells that might still be active. One file contained something even more valuable: the complete technical specifications of human military equipment from before the conquest. Weapons, ships, communication systems, and battle tactics that the Zephyrians thought they had destroyed forever. But the most important discovery was a message from Dr. Amy Sullivan, a human scientist who had been forced to work in Zephyrian research facilities. The message was only 3 months old, which meant she was still alive and still fighting in her own way. To any human who finds this, her recorded voice whispered from the device, I have spent years studying our captors. They believe they understand us, but they are wrong. Humans have something the Zephyrians do not expect or understand. We adapt. We survive. We find ways to win even when winning seems impossible. Dr. Sullivan's message continued. I have been secretly documenting Zephyrian weaknesses for years. Their technology is advanced, but it follows strict patterns. Their society is highly organized, but that makes them predictable. Most importantly, they have never faced an enemy like us before. Jake felt something he had not experienced in years. Hope. Real, burning hope that maybe, just maybe, humans could fight back. He carefully memorized Dr. Sullivan's contact codes and the locations of other resistance cells. The information was too dangerous to keep, even hidden. If the Zephyrians found the device, everyone in the mining station would be executed as an example to other slaves. But first, Jake had to find a way to contact the other humans mentioned in the files. He needed Lisa's technical skills to build a communication system that could reach across star systems without being detected. He needed Pete's knowledge of explosives and demolition. Most of all, he needed to find other humans who still remembered what it meant to be free. The next morning, Jake went back to work as usual, but everything had changed. As he drilled into the asteroid rock, he was not just a slave following orders. He was a human being planning to fight back. Kreldus walked past, his yellow eyes scanning the workers for any signs of trouble. He saw Jake working hard and nodded with satisfaction. The alien guard had no idea that the broken human slave in front of him was already planning the first steps toward destroying the Zephyrian Empire. Jake looked at Lisa and Pete, working nearby. Soon he would tell them about the hidden files. Soon they would begin to remember what humans could do when they worked together. The Zephyrians had called them slaves for over 2 centuries. It was time to show them what a mistake that had been. 6 months had passed since Jake found the hidden data cache. Everything looked the same on Kepler-7, but everything had changed. Jake, Lisa, and Pete worked their shifts like always, but now they had a secret purpose that burned inside them, like a flame. Lisa had used spare parts from broken machines to build a communication device small enough to hide in her toolkit. It took her 3 months of careful work, stealing one small piece at a time. The Zephyrians counted every major component, but they did not care about tiny wires and old circuit boards that seemed worthless. The signal is ready, Lisa whispered to Jake during their meal break. The food was the same gray paste they ate every day, but Jake barely tasted it. His mind was focused on their plan. That night, Lisa activated the hidden transmitter. The signal was weak and disguised to look like normal equipment noise, but it carried Jake's coded message across the galaxy. After 2 weeks of trying, they finally received an answer. Dr. Amy Sullivan was alive and working in a Zephyrian research facility on the planet Vega 4. Her response was short, but filled with hope. Ready to help. Have been waiting for contact. We'll send technical data soon. More responses came from other hidden cells. Humans on mining worlds, factory planets, and even some working in Zephyrian cities began to make contact. Jake realized that the resistance had never truly died. It had just been sleeping, waiting for someone to wake it up. Ben Foster was a maintenance worker on the space station orbiting Vega 4. His job was to repair the computers and communication systems that the Zephyrians used to control their empire. The aliens thought humans were too stupid to understand their technology, so they never worried about what Ben might learn while fixing their machines. Ben had been secretly studying Zephyrian computer systems for years. He knew their security, codes, their communication protocols, and most importantly, their weaknesses. When Jake's message reached him, Ben was ready to strike back. Their whole system depends on central control, Ben explained during one of their secret communications. Every ship, every base, every planet reports to command centers. If we can disrupt those centers, We can cause chaos across multiple star systems. Dr. Amy Sullivan sent detailed information about Zephyrian technology and biology. She had spent years pretending to be a loyal slave while secretly gathering intelligence. Her files revealed something important. The Zephyrians were not as superior as they believed. They follow strict rules and patterns, Amy's data explained. Their society is highly organized with clear hierarchies and procedures for everything. This makes them efficient, but it also makes them predictable. When something unexpected happens, they struggle to adapt quickly. Jake shared this information with Maria Gonzalez, a communications specialist working in a slave camp on Titan III. Maria had once been a radio operator for Earth's military before the conquest. Now she used her skills to build secret networks between human work camps. The aliens think we are broken and scattered, Maria told Jake during one of their coded conversations. They do not realize that we have been quietly connecting with each other for years. We know where every human camp is located. We know which guards are cruel and which ones are lazy. We know their schedules, their weaknesses, their fears. The plan began to take shape. Jake's group would focus on sabotaging mining operations and supply lines. Ben would attack computer systems and communication networks. Maria would coordinate between different resistance cells. Dr. Sullivan would provide technical support and intelligence about Zephyrian capabilities. Their first target was a supply depot on the moon of Kepler-7. The depot stored food, equipment, and fuel for dozens of mining stations across the system. Pete had studied the building's layout during his work shifts and knew exactly where to place his explosives for maximum damage. Lisa designed a way to override the depot's security systems using Ben's knowledge of Zephyrian computer codes. The plan was simple but dangerous. If they succeeded, they would prove that humans could fight back. If they failed, everyone involved would be executed. The night of the attack, Jake felt his heart pounding as he and Pete moved through the darkness toward the supply depot. They had disabled their shock collars using a technique Dr. Sullivan had discovered. For the first time in years, Jake could move without the constant threat of electric pain. Pete's explosives were hidden inside routine maintenance equipment. The Zephyrians were used to seeing human workers carrying tools and supplies, so they paid no attention to Pete as he placed his bombs in critical locations throughout the depot. Lisa waited in the communication center, her fingers ready to activate the virus Ben had created to crash the depot's computer systems. At exactly midnight, she pressed the activation key. The explosions lit up the night sky like a new sun. The supply depot, which had taken the Zephyrians 5 years to build, was destroyed in less than 5 minutes. Months of stored supplies went up in flames, and the shockwave could be felt across half the moon. But Jake's group was not the only one striking that night. Across the galaxy, other resistance cells launched their own attacks. Maria had coordinated simultaneous strikes on 12 different Zephyrian facilities. Supply depots, communication towers, and transportation hubs were hit at the same time. The Zephyrians were shocked and confused. They had not faced organized resistance in over a century. Their security forces were designed to handle individual troublemakers, not coordinated attacks across multiple star systems. High Commander Vexithala, the military leader of the local sector, called an emergency meeting with his officers. Jake and his team listened to intercepted communications as the alien commanders tried to understand what had happened. How could the slaves organize such attacks? Vexithala demanded. They have no weapons, no training, no leadership. This should be impossible. Perhaps some of them are more clever than we thought, suggested one of his subordinates. Clever? Vexithala's voice was filled with anger. They are animals. We have controlled them for 2 centuries. A few lucky explosions do not change that fact. But Jake knew that everything had changed. The attacks proved that humans could strike back, and word of the victories spread quickly through the secret communication networks. Slaves who had given up hope began to remember that they were once free. Workers who had accepted their fate began to dream of rebellion. Dr. Sullivan sent new intelligence that made Jake smile for the first time in years. The Zephyrian military was increasing security and changing their procedures, but they were doing it in predictable ways. They were following their standard protocols for dealing with unrest, which made their next moves easy to anticipate. They still do not understand what they are facing, Amy's message explained. They think this is just random violence by desperate slaves. They cannot imagine that we are capable of strategic thinking and long-term planning. Maria reported that recruitment was accelerating across the galaxy. Humans who had been afraid to join the resistance were now volunteering to help. The successful attacks had proven that victory was possible. Jake looked at Lisa and Pete as they planned their next operation. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were building something that could challenge the Zephyrian Empire itself. The aliens had called humans slaves, but they were about to learn what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. The liberation of Titan IX changed everything. What started as small acts of sabotage had grown into a full rebellion that spread across dozens of star systems. Jake Morrison found himself leading thousands of humans who looked to him for hope and direction. The slave colony on Titan IX had been one of the largest in the sector, with over 10,000 humans working in chemical processing plants. When Jake's team arrived with stolen Zephyrian transport ships, the guards were completely unprepared for a coordinated attack. Carlos Jackson had been a prisoner on Titan IX for 15 years. Before the conquest, he had been a military officer who studied enemy tactics and strategies. The Zephyrians thought his knowledge was useless now, but Carlos had spent years watching his captors and learning their weaknesses. They always attack the same way, Carlos explained to Jake as they planned the assault. First, they send in ground troops to secure the area. Then they bring in heavy weapons if there is resistance. They never expect us to strike first or use their own tactics against them. Rachel Kim had been a pilot before becoming a slave. She knew how to fly human aircraft, but she had also learned to operate Zephyrian ships by watching and listening during transport flights. When Jake's team captured their first alien vessel, Rachel was the one who figured out how to make it work. Their ships are faster and stronger than anything we had on Earth, Rachel told the other rebels. But they are designed to fight other organized fleets, not small groups using hit-and-run tactics. If we stay mobile and unpredictable, we can outfight ships 10 times more powerful than ours. The attack on Titan IX began at dawn. Rachel flew a captured Zephyrian fighter directly at the main guard tower, firing at full power. The aliens were so surprised to see one of their own ships attacking them that they hesitated for several crucial seconds. That hesitation was all Jake needed. His ground teams, led by Carlos Jackson, hit the guard posts and weapon stations simultaneously. Pete Rodriguez had taught other humans how to make explosives from industrial chemicals, and the colony's own factories provided all the materials they needed. Lisa Carter had worked with Ben Foster to create a computer virus that crashed the colony's security systems. When the Zephyrian guards tried to call for help, their communications were jammed by equipment the humans had built from spare parts. The battle lasted only 4 hours. The Zephyrian guards were trained to fight organized armies, not desperate humans who attacked from unexpected directions using improvised weapons and tactics. When the aliens tried to fall back to defensive positions, they found that the humans had already destroyed or captured those positions. Guard Captain Kreldos, the same alien who had tormented Jake on Kepler 7, was captured trying to escape in a damaged shuttle. Jake found him hiding in a storage room, his blue scales pale with fear. "You cannot do this," Kreldos said, his voice shaking. "We are your masters. You are slaves. This rebellion will fail and you will all be executed." Jake looked at the alien, who had caused him so much pain, and felt only pity. "We were never your slaves," he said quietly. "We were your prisoners. Now we are free." The liberation of Titan IX sent shockwaves across the Zephyrian Empire. High Commander Vexathala called for immediate reinforcements from the core worlds, but the Empire was already struggling to maintain control in dozens of other systems where human rebellions were breaking out. Dr. Amy Sullivan's intelligence network had grown into a sophisticated operation that provided real-time information about Zephyrian military movements. Maria Gonzalez coordinated communications between rebel cells across hundreds of worlds, turning isolated uprisings into a coordinated campaign. But the humans' greatest advantage was something the Zephyrians could not understand or counter: their ability to adapt and improvise. While the aliens followed strict military procedures and chain-of-command structures, Humans changed their tactics constantly and made decisions based on local conditions. Ben Foster led a team of hackers who had learned to turn Zephyrian technology against itself. They reprogrammed automated defense systems to attack alien ships, altered supply manifests to send weapons to human rebels instead of Zephyrian troops, and created false intelligence reports that confused enemy commanders. Their computers are very advanced, Ben explained to Jake during a strategy meeting. But they are programmed to trust information that comes from authorized sources. Once we learned how to fake those authorization codes, we could make their own systems work for us. Pete Rodriguez had evolved from a demolitions expert into a master of unconventional warfare. He taught humans across the galaxy how to build powerful weapons from common materials found in every industrial facility. Mining explosives became ship-killing missiles. Factory chemicals became poison gas. Construction equipment became armored vehicles. The Zephyrians responded by increasing security and restricting human access to potentially dangerous materials. But this only made their own operations less efficient, as they now had to do much of the manual labor themselves or rely on less productive automated systems. Rachel Kim commanded a growing fleet of captured and converted alien ships. Human pilots, who had learned to fly by watching their captors, proved to be more creative and unpredictable than Zephyrian military aviators. They used tactics that violated every rule of civilized space combat, ramming enemy vessels, hiding in asteroid fields, and attacking from directions that should have been impossible. The war's turning point came when Dr. Amy Sullivan made a critical discovery about Zephyrian biology. While pretending to work on routine medical research, she had been secretly studying the aliens' weaknesses for years. They evolved on worlds with very specific atmospheric conditions, Amy explained, during a secure communication with Jake. All 4 species in their empire require the same mixture of gases to breathe efficiently. Their environmental systems on ships and bases are standardized across their entire civilization. Amy had developed a biological agent that would disrupt the Zephyrians' breathing without affecting humans or most other species. The compound could be manufactured using common industrial chemicals and dispersed through ventilation systems. Jake stared at the technical specifications Amy had sent. The weapon could cripple Zephyrian forces across multiple star systems simultaneously, but using it would mean crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. "This will kill them," Jake said quietly. "They have been killing us for 2 centuries, Carlos replied. "How many humans died in their mines and factories? How many children never lived to see freedom?" Lisa looked uncomfortable. "If we use this weapon, we become like them." "No," said Rachel firmly. "They conquered us because they thought we were weak. They enslaved us because they thought we would accept it. Using their own methods against them is not becoming like them. It is showing them what they created." Jake made the decision that would define the rest of the war. The biological weapon would be deployed against military targets only, giving the Zephyrians a chance to surrender before it was used against civilian populations. But Jake knew that the aliens would not surrender easily. They had ruled the galaxy for too long and considered other species to be inferior. The war that had started with small acts of sabotage was about to become a fight for the survival of both species. As Jake looked at his fellow humans, he saw something that would have terrified the Zephyrians if they had understood it. These were not the broken slaves who had accepted defeat for 2 centuries. These were free humans who remembered what they were capable of when pushed too far. The biological weapon changed the war in ways Jake never expected. Within 6 months of its first deployment, the Zephyrian Empire began to collapse not from military defeat, but from fear and chaos within their own ranks. The weapon affected only the 4 alien species that made up the Empire, leaving humans and other conquered peoples completely unharmed. But its psychological impact was far greater than its physical effects. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians faced an enemy that could strike at them anywhere, anytime, using their own air systems against them. High Commander Vexithala watched his empire crumble from his command ship in the Proxima system. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, military bases abandoning their posts, supply lines breaking down, and entire star systems declaring independence as local species saw the Zephyrians' weakness. How is this possible? Vexathala demanded of his remaining officers. We conquered hundreds of worlds. We defeated armies that had fought for thousands of years. How can a species of slaves destroy everything we built? General Mordak, his chief military advisor, studied the tactical displays with confusion. Their attacks make no sense according to our military doctrine. They strike randomly, retreat when they should advance, and fight hardest when they should surrender. Our computers cannot predict their next moves. Then stop trying to predict them, Vexathala roared. Destroy their homeworld. If we eliminate Earth, the rebellion will collapse. But Earth was no longer the helpless planet the Zephyrians had conquered 2 centuries ago. Jake Morrison's fleet had returned to defend humanity's birthworld, bringing with them hundreds of captured alien ships and thousands of battle-hardened human fighters. Rachel Kim commanded the orbital defense network that protected Earth's cities. The planet's factories, rebuilt by freed human workers, now produced weapons and ships using a combination of old human designs and stolen Zephyrian technology. They are coming, Rachel reported to Jake as her sensors detected the approaching enemy fleet. 200 ships, including Vexathala's flagship. This is their final attempt to break us. Jake stood on the bridge of his command ship, a captured Zephyrian heavy cruiser that Lisa Carter had modified with human weapons and tactics in mind. Around him, former slaves worked at control stations, their faces calm and determined. All ships, this is Jake Morrison, he announced over the fleet communication system. The aliens who called us slaves are coming to destroy our home. They think that if they can defeat us here, they can return to the old ways. They are wrong. The battle for Earth began as Vexthala's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. The Zephyrians expected to face desperate resistance from a few stolen ships and improvised weapons. Instead, they found a coordinated defense force that had been preparing for this moment for months. Dr. Amy Sullivan had provided detailed intelligence about Zephyrian ship designs and weaknesses. Ben Foster had created computer viruses that could shut down enemy systems through their own communication networks. Carlos Jackson had developed battle plans that used human unpredictability as a weapon. The first phase of the battle went exactly as the Zephyrians expected. Their superior ships and weapons began to push back the human defenders, forcing Jake's fleet to retreat toward Earth's inner planets. But this retreat was part of Carlos Jackson's plan. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system, they found themselves surrounded by hidden human forces that had been waiting in asteroid fields and behind moons. Pete Rodriguez had spent months placing massive explosive devices throughout the asteroid belt. When Vexathala's ships passed through what they thought was empty space, synchronized detonations tore apart dozens of vessels and disrupted their battle formations. Rachel Kim led fighter squadrons that attacked from impossible angles, using the gravity of planets and moons to accelerate their small ships to incredible speeds. The Zephyrian pilots, trained to fight in organized formations, could not adapt to the chaotic three-dimensional battlefield that humans created. Lisa Carter had redesigned human ships to be faster and more maneuverable than anything the aliens could field. While Zephyrian vessels were built for raw firepower and heavy armor, human ships could change direction quickly and strike at weak points that larger ships could not defend. Maria Gonzalez coordinated communications between all human forces, ensuring that every ship and fighter knew where they were needed most. Her network allowed the human fleet to act like a single organism, adapting and responding to threats faster than the aliens could counter. But the real turning point came when Ben Foster activated his masterpiece, a computer virus that had been hidden in captured Zephyrian equipment for months. As the alien fleet closed in on Earth, their own computers began to turn against them. Ship navigation systems sent vessels into collision courses with their own allies. Weapon-targeting computers fired on friendly ships. Communication networks broadcast false orders that confused commanders and separated the fleet into scattered groups. Vexthala watched in horror as his carefully organized attack dissolved into chaos. His flagship's computers had been infected by the virus, and he found himself fighting his own ship's systems while trying to command the battle. "This is impossible," he screamed at his officers. "Slaves cannot defeat us. We are the masters of the galaxy. Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system, speaking directly to the alien commander. "You called us slaves, but you never understood what that word meant to us. Slaves dream of freedom. Slaves remember what they have lost. Slaves fight harder than anyone else because they have the most to gain." The final confrontation came when Jake's ship closed in on Vexthala's damaged flagship. The alien commander, desperate and facing the complete destruction of his empire, ordered his remaining ships to ram the human vessels in suicide attacks. But even this final act of desperation failed. Human pilots, who had learned to fly by improvising and adapting, easily avoided the clumsy ramming attempts. Meanwhile, Pete Rodriguez's boarding teams used the aliens' own transport systems to get inside enemy ships and capture them from within. Vexthala's flagship was the last ship standing. Jake led the boarding party himself, walking through corridors where he had once been dragged as a prisoner. Now he carried weapons taken from Zephyrian armories and wore armor stripped from their defeated soldiers. He found Vexthala on the bridge, alone and wounded. The alien commander who had once seemed so powerful now looked small and pathetic. "You have destroyed everything," Vexthala said, his voice filled with defeat. "Thousands of years of civilization, gone because of animals who could not accept their place." Jake looked at the alien with pity rather than anger. "We were never animals. We were never slaves. We were prisoners who refused to give up hope. That was your mistake." The explosion that destroyed Vexthala's flagship could be seen from Earth's surface. With their leader dead and their fleet destroyed, the remaining Zephyrian forces throughout the galaxy began to surrender or flee to distant star systems. Dr. Amy Sullivan stood in the ruins of the former Zephyrian government center on Vega Prime, reading the declaration that established the Free Human Republic. Around her, representatives from dozens of species that had been conquered by the Empire worked together to build a new government based on cooperation rather than domination. The Zephyrian Empire, which had lasted for over 1,000 years, fell in just 2 years once they made the mistake of underestimating human determination. Other alien species throughout the galaxy quickly signed peace treaties with humanity, having learned that humans, when pushed too far, did not just fight back. They rewrote the rules entirely. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, but he found his greatest satisfaction in simple things. He watched human children play in parks on worlds that had once been slave colonies. He saw former prisoners like Maria Gonzalez working as diplomats and ambassadors. He knew that humanity would never be enslaved again. The Empire had called them slaves, but slaves had dreams. And sometimes dreams become strong enough to destroy empires.